Hello, beautiful people. It's Lulu. I'd love to start today by checking in with you. Take a breath with me. How are you feeling about your productivity levels lately? Are you feeling like you're winning at productivity or not so much? Maybe you're somewhere in between, feeling like you should be doing more, but not quite sure what more even looks like, or how to get more done in your day, which is already filled to overflowing. Welcome back to the Lulu Essey podcast, where we do things differently. No editing, no polish, just honest conversations that offer you practical tools to transform your life from the inside out. Before we get going, I'd love you to do something for me. Share this episode right now with someone in your life who struggles with productivity pressure. Maybe they're always stressed about their to-do list, or they can't seem to give themselves permission to rest, or they're constantly judging themselves based on how much or little they've accomplished. Share this as an act of rebellion, as a way of saying we don't have to live under the tyranny of our to-do lists anymore. So, to have an honest conversation with you, I first need to make a confession. I once heard someone say that you teach best what you most need to learn, and that is very apt in this case. I am the first person to judge myself based on how productive I've been on any given day. And here's the thing. Sometimes I work from a physical list on paper where I'm literally checking boxes, and sometimes it's a mental checklist that's constantly running in my head. Either way, if I can't tick enough boxes, real or imaginary, if I don't accomplish what I think I should have accomplished, I start to feel like I'm messing up, like I'm not doing my best. I should be doing better at life itself. And I start feeling like I'm not making enough progress. And when that happens, it starts to feel like I'll never be able to catch up. And when I'm taking breaks, which I really need, when I'm giving myself space to think and breathe and just be human, I have to be so mindful about the guilt. Because if I'm not mindful, that guilt starts to creep in and digs its claws into me, and those claws hurt. They are so sharp. Remember the productivity police we talked about in episode 33? Well, they're back, and they're living rent-free in many of our heads. And just in case there's any confusion, these police most often are imaginary and live in our own heads. Sometimes they do take human form in the guise of an over-demanding boss, a parent, or a partner. But I'm mostly talking about the pressure we put on ourselves to be productive that comes from our conditioning to see productivity as one of the ultimate badges of honor. And more, that we measure our worth based on our productivity. It's meant to tell us how well we're doing. Right? Well, wrong. Because that kind of mindset can be really insidiously damaging. In plain language, it sucks and it hurts us. Your to-do list called, and apparently we need to have a serious conversation with it about boundaries. So let's have a conversation about how our obsession with productivity is actually sabotaging our mental fitness and how to shift that without throwing our goals out the window and saying, bugger it all, I give up. You know how it goes. You wake up in the morning and almost automatically, unless you're focused and mindful, the first thing you do is start scrolling through your to-do list, whether it's written down or just swirling around in your head. And before your feet even hit the ground, your brain is already spiraling with everything you have to do. And it sits like a heavy weight on your chest. And you haven't even had your morning coffee yet. Can you relate to this? I'm sure there are many of you out there who can. Or my favorite, the Sunday night freak out when you're thinking about the week ahead and all the things you should accomplish. The way we've somehow made productivity our new religion, where rest equals laziness, which equals failure. And now we're guilty about the weekend and having slacked off. Look at all this precious time I just wasted. Threw it right down the drain. This often happens to me. I feel a tightness grip my stomach on a Sunday evening when the productivity police come knocking with their complete sense of humor failure, never mind any compassion, reminding me that I will probably have to pay a hefty fine for taking a break. Can you feel that? That stomach clenching anxiety when you think about all the things you should be doing or should have accomplished? When productivity becomes our identity instead of just one tool in our toolkit, we're not just exhausting ourselves. We're buying into some fabricated version of ourselves that we're completely disconnected from our own inner wisdom, our own self-compassion. That's what it does to us. We start measuring our worth by our output, and that can be a very dangerous game because there will always be more to do. And there are no winners in that game. And here's what I've really come to realize. The productivity guilt spiral isn't actually about being lazy. It's about being human in a world that's convinced us our value comes from what we accomplish rather than who we are. In a nutshell, it says our value comes from the outside, not the inside. So how did we get here? We've been taught that our worth equals our output, and social media is really expert here at piling this on. So many people, especially the so-called influencers out there, are posting their productivity wins, how they ace their morning routines daily without fail, and shiny, golden, accomplished to-do lists. It's like this constant productivity parade where everyone looks so put together and accomplished. This hustle and grind mentality has convinced us that rest is giving up, that if we're not constantly pushing forward, we're falling behind. Carl Jung, one of my favorites, once said, "Boredom is the feeling that everything is a waste of time. Serenity, that nothing is." Let that sink in for a moment. Boredom is the feeling that everything is a waste of time. Serenity is that nothing is. We're the only species on the planet that tries to escape boredom at all costs and replaces it with the quest to be productive. Let's just for a moment consider that there may be a more loving, more effective way to look at this. Is boredom really the enemy of productivity? Or can it lead to more purposeful productivity? Productivity addicts hate boredom because they think it's a complete waste of precious time. But here's something to consider. Boredom is where the magic is allowed to happen, where it has the space to happen, where our minds aren't constantly being stimulated, when we're not filling every moment with tasks and distractions. That's when our brains actually get to wonder and make connections they couldn't make before. So what do we do instead? Let me offer you something that shifted my approach to productivity. Remember in last week's episode on wellness perfectionism, we talked about the good enough revolution. Well, sometimes done is better than perfect. Actually, done is always better than perfect, because perfect is an illusion. Good enough can be revolutionary. What would it look like to complete something at 80% instead of pushing for 100 and burning out? I'm not talking about phoning it in, being sloppy or careless. I'm talking about recognizing when something is complete enough to serve its purpose without needing to be absolutely perfect. Perfect is an illusion, a construct we've created that keeps us stuck. Done well will always beat the imaginary perfect. So instead of thinking about this as dropping your standards, think about it as being strategic about where you invest your energy. Perfection often disguises itself as high standards, when really it's just fear of judgment. Let that land for a moment. Can you feel the difference between genuine standards and fear-based perfectionism in your own life? This is especially crucial for people in creative fields. And I say this as someone whose creativity is literally part of my living. But honestly, it's not just creatives who need this. Anyone who's ever had their best idea in the shower, solved a problem while taking a walk, or had a breakthrough while staring out the window knows what I'm talking about. It's not laziness. That's your brain doing what it does best when we give it space to breathe. When we fill every moment with productivity, we're not just stealing from our rest. We're stealing from our own creativity, our problem-solving ability, and our capacity for original thought. And we're robbing ourselves of our inner peace. We're turning ourselves into task-completing machines instead of thinking, feeling, creating exquisitely imperfect human beings. And this is what makes the productivity trap so insidious. It's not just exhausting us, it's literally blocking our natural, creative, and cognitive processes. So let's talk about giving yourself permission to pause. And here's where I can help. Allow me to be your living, breathing, coughing, walking, talking permission slip. I'll give you the permission you're waiting for. You have permission to pause, to take breaks, to let some things wait until tomorrow. Rest is not earned through productivity, and it's not the reward you get for productivity. It's a basic, vital, life-giving human need that actually makes you way more effective when you come back to your tasks. Remember those permission slips from school? We've spoken about them several times before. Well, reminder, you're the parent now, and you can give yourself permission to rest without having accomplished what you think is enough to deserve rest. You can give yourself permission to have a less productive day because you're human, not a machine. Your mental fitness bank account needs deposits of rest and space just as much as it needs deposits of accomplishment. I'd like to tell you about a question that has shifted how I approach my days. Being busy is not the same as being productive, and being productive isn't the same as being purposeful. What actually matters to you today? Not what looks impressive on social media, not what someone else thinks you should prioritize, but what aligns with your values and moves you forward in a way that feels sustainable. Sometimes the most purposeful thing you can do is nothing at all. And I know that is a hard one to even consider for a lot of us. Sometimes it's just sitting with your thoughts for a few minutes. Yep, just sitting, just breathing, just being for a few minutes. Ask yourself, am I being productive or am I being purposeful? Because there's a big difference. And yes, we strive to be both, but we need to know the difference. With time, practice, and consistency, you will learn to tell the difference. And that is a powerful place to live from. Here's something you can try right now. The 60-second mental fitness check. And just like we talked about last week, I want you to remember the magic isn't in what you choose. It's in the choosing itself. First, pause and notice. How does my list, imaginary or otherwise, how does it make me feel right now? Does it feel supportive or overwhelming? Does it fill me with dread? Does it feel energizing or completely draining? Then, take 3 deep breaths. Breathe in and out, in and out, in and out. Allow your nervous system a little moment to reset. And thirdly, ask yourself, what would love do right now? What would kindness choose? Not what productivity culture demands, but what your wisest, most compassionate self would suggest. There is no right or wrong answer here. And if going back to your to-do list is the most compassionate thing, truly compassionate, not pretend compassionate, then do that. It's okay. Remember, awareness over judgment. Give yourself permission to experiment. And if it feels too much and too scary for you at first, that's okay. This is a practice, which means it requires just that. Practice. Go easy on yourself. Here's your gentle experiment for tomorrow. And I use the word gentle very intentionally. Pick one thing from your to-do list that you can do with 80% effort instead of what you perceive to be 100%. Notice how it feels to choose good enough over the illusion of perfect. Pay attention to what happens in your body, in your mind, when you give yourself to be permission to be human instead of trying to be superhuman. Does any of this feel doable for you? Even if it feels hard, remembering that hard doesn't mean impossible. Beautiful people, your worth isn't measured by your to-do list. You are valuable because you exist, not because of what you accomplish. And here's a beautiful irony. When we stop making productivity our identity, when we work with our natural rhythms instead of against them, we often become more naturally productive because we're working with our energy instead of fighting it. If this episode helped you realize that maybe your to-do list has been running the show instead of serving your life, I want you to get rebellious with sharing this. To all the perfectionists out there, me included, share this episode. To all the people pleasers, me included, who can't say no to one more task, share this. Start by texting this episode to 3 people who need to hear that their worth isn't tied to their productivity. Let's share some kindness and compassion. Follow my show on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And please, leave me a review. It helps other people find these conversations. You can watch this episode on my YouTube channel if you prefer. And please hit subscribe when you're there. Next week, we're preparing your mental fitness for fall and winter with tiny tools for seasonal survival, perfect as we head into the darker months. Join me. I'd love to have you. Remember, you don't have to have all the answers. We never do, none of us. You just have to keep showing up for yourself with love. And as always, what comes from the heart reaches the heart. And today, with love and compassion for your commitment to productivity and your willingness to shift to helping instead of harming, this comes straight from my heart to yours.